The map changed overnight. And if you are tracking this outbreak by where it was yesterday, you are already behind, because the tornado threat that battered Oklahoma, Illinois, Arkansas, and the Central Plains over the past week has not finished moving. It has shifted rapidly, decisively, and into zones that are now being placed under serious and specific risk designations by the Storm Prediction Center. New impact zones are confirmed. The outbreak that began on April 22nd is now in its 7th day, and the communities now in the crosshairs are not the ones that were warned about when this sequence first started. This is the story of an outbreak that refuses to end, and a tornado threat that is rewriting the impact map in real time. To understand where the system is now, you have to understand where it has been, because the geography of destruction over the past 7 days tells a story about how fast severe weather can travel, how unpredictably it can regenerate, and how the communities that thought they were outside the danger zone can find themselves directly inside it within 24 hours. The outbreak began in earnest on April 22nd, when the atmosphere over the southern plains ignited. On April 23rd, an EF4 tornado, the strongest confirmed in the United States since June 2025, struck the city of Enid, Oklahoma, with winds reaching 170 to 175 miles per hour, a track of 9 miles, and a width of 500 yards. Homes were demolished, structures were pushed off foundations. Vance Air Force Base was struck and forced to close. It was the first EF4 in Garfield County since 1991. That was day one of what would become a week-long siege. On April 25th, giant hail and damaging winds hit the southern plains. On April 26th, twin simultaneous tornadoes were spotted near Forker, Oklahoma, a phenomenon so rare that even experienced storm chasers rarely witness it in a career. Particularly dangerous situation. Tornado warnings were issued across multiple states. Deadly EF2 tornadoes struck North Texas near Runaway Bay, about 80 miles northwest of Dallas, killing at least 2 people and displacing 20 families. The outbreak had claimed its first fatalities. On April 27th, as the system pushed east, a tornado tore through Germantown, Illinois. Just before 11 p.m. Central Time, the National Weather Service in Little Rock, Arkansas, issued a particularly dangerous situation tornado warning for an observed destructive tornado moving through Hanover and surrounding communities in Stone County. The tornado stayed on the ground in Arkansas for approximately 10 miles, with debris lofted high into the air and wrapped around the backside of the storm. The Stone County Sheriff's Office reported damaged homes and vehicles, downed power lines, and fallen trees blocking roads as emergency crews responded across the area overnight. The day before, it was Oklahoma, then Illinois, then Arkansas. The system was not stopping, it was marching. And on April 28th, the threat shifted again. And this time it shifted into the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area. A level 4 out of 5 risk of severe thunderstorms was placed over northeast Texas, including the Dallas-Fort Worth corridor. A tornado struck the city of Mineral Wells, Texas. Local officials asked residents to stay home as first responders responded to confirmed structural damage across the city. A 45% probability of hail was issued for parts of northern Texas, with baseball-sized hail considered likely. Hailstones reaching 4.5 inches in diameter were reported in Johnson County, Texas. As of the latest count, 56 tornadoes have now been confirmed across the full outbreak sequence, a number that is still rising as damage surveys are completed in areas struck overnight. But here is the development that is now sending alerts to communities that never expected to be in this conversation. The Storm Prediction Center's latest outlook has confirmed 2 brand new slight risk zones, and neither of them is where the outbreak originally started. The first covers a broad zone across the south-central United States, including San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, Shreveport, Jackson, Lake Charles, New Orleans, and Mobile. The primary threat there is significant hail. The second slight risk zone is something that forecasters have flagged with particular significance, because it stretches along the East Coast corridor. The cities now in the active impact zone for damaging winds and potential tornado spin-ups include Roanoke, Greensboro, Raleigh, Charlotte, Wilmington, Columbia, Charleston, and Jacksonville, the East Coast. A week after this outbreak began in Oklahoma, that is how far and how fast this system has moved. The East Coast's slight risk carries the primary threat of damaging wind, with tornado spin-ups considered possible across the affected area. These would be different in character from the violent long-track supercell tornadoes that devastated communities in Oklahoma and Arkansas. East Coast tornado events are typically shorter-lived, embedded in fast-moving squall lines and harder to warn for precisely because they develop and dissipate quickly. But they are still real, and they are still dangerous. And the millions of people living along the East Coast corridor, from Virginia through North Carolina, South Carolina, and into northern Florida, are now being asked to monitor a severe weather threat that most of them had no expectation of facing when the week began. The speed at which this threat has shifted is itself part of the story. In less than 7 days, confirmed tornado damage has been documented in Oklahoma, Texas, Illinois, Arkansas, Missouri, and now warnings are extending into Georgia and the Carolinas. That is a geographic sweep of more than 1,500 miles. And while the character of the threat has changed as it has moved, from violent long-track EF4 supercell tornadoes to squall-line spin-ups and damaging wind events, the fundamental message to communities in the newly confirmed impact zones is the same. You are now in the area, you need to know your shelter plan, and you need to be monitoring official weather alerts closely. The Kansas City area is a specific example of just how extreme this season's geographic spread has been. Tornado warnings issued for the Kansas City region in 2026 are, according to tracking data, in a league of their own compared to any previous year through the same date. The number of severe storm and tornado warnings logged for that metro area year to date, as of April 27th, has been described by storm tracking analysts as unprecedented. Kansas City sits at the boundary between the southern plains and the Midwest. It is not historically immune to severe weather, but the frequency and intensity of the 2026 season in that corridor has exceeded what even longtime residents and local emergency managers expected heading into spring. And Kansas City is not alone. The NWS Chicago forecast area had already issued 128 severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings by April 19th alone, a number that had never been reached that early in a calendar year in the office's recorded history. 20 confirmed tornadoes in the Chicago NWS coverage area by mid-April, in a region where the historical annual average is between 10 and 20 for an entire year. These are not incremental statistical anomalies. They are documentation of a season that has compressed what used to be a full year of severe weather activity into the first 4 months of the calendar. The pattern that produced this outbreak also has broader implications for how meteorologists and emergency managers are thinking about tornado risk in America. The 2026 tornado season has already delivered a masterclass in how quickly and unpredictably the threat can redistribute itself geographically. The season started with a major outbreak in mid-April that sent 80 confirmed tornadoes across a 650-mile corridor from Oklahoma to Michigan, setting a record for the NWS Chicago forecast area in terms of early season warning activity. Then came the April 22nd to 24 sequence with the Enid EF4. Then the continuation into late April with the Arkansas PDS tornado and the Texas events. And now, as the system enters its final phase, it is reaching the East Coast. The seasonal forecasts issued heading into 2026 describe this year's tornado risk as expanding beyond traditional Tornado Alley into what researchers call new impact zones. Traditional Tornado Alley, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, and parts of Colorado, remains the core. But Dixie Alley, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, Tennessee, and Arkansas is increasingly affected by outbreak-level events. This region is especially dangerous because of the higher frequency of nighttime tornadoes and reduced visibility during storms that can make shelter decisions more difficult and warning lead times functionally shorter, even when the technical warnings go out on time. The Midwest exposure zone covering Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Missouri continues to see consistent activity. And the Northeast occasional severe weather zone, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and surrounding states, is now documented as a zone that can receive real tornado events when strong systems track far enough east. What the April 22 to 28 outbreak has done is demonstrate all of those expanding zones simultaneously in a single week-long event. Oklahoma and the southern plains received the most violent impacts. Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota were struck by the mid-April opener. Arkansas was hit with a PDS tornado warning on April 27th, and now the East Coast is under an active slight risk. This is what a shifting multi-day outbreak looks like when it interacts with a highly mobile jet stream pattern that carries the energy progressively eastward rather than allowing it to dissipate in place. There's also a human dimension to this geographic shift that matters, and that gets lost in the daily storm tracking reports. The communities now in the newly confirmed impact zones are not, in general, communities with the same level of severe weather cultural awareness that exists in Oklahoma, Kansas, or central Illinois. East Coast residents, on average, have less personal experience with tornado events, less familiarity with watching radar, and less ingrained muscle memory around storm shelter behavior than residents of the southern plains who have grown up doing tornado drills and have basements or community shelters built into the fabric of daily life. Raleigh, North Carolina, is a city of more than 470,000 people. Charlotte has nearly 900,000. These are major American cities in the path of today's severe weather risk. And many of their residents have never heard a tornado siren go off in a situation that was real rather than a test. The warning system is doing its job. The Storm Prediction Center identified the threat days in advance. The slight risk zones are now publicly available on the SPC website and through every major weather app. But the warning system only works if the people receiving the warnings know how to act on them. And in communities with limited severe weather experience, the risk of underreacting, of seeing a level 2 slight risk and thinking that does not sound serious enough to change my plans, is real. A slight risk in a densely populated East Coast corridor with no basement row houses, apartment buildings, and millions of people outdoors during the afternoon and evening can produce a serious and dangerous event, even from a single tornado spin-up in a squall line. The other thing that 2026's outbreak sequence has made clear is the growing significance of non-tornadic severe weather hazards. The 4.5-inch hailstones in Johnson County, Texas, can destroy roofs, shatter windshields, injure livestock, and write off crops in minutes. The straight-line wind events that have accompanied this outbreak, documented in Michigan, Wisconsin, and along the squall line passages, can produce damage indistinguishable from a weak tornado across a corridor of tens of miles. And the heavy rainfall that has trailed this system has caused flooding in multiple states, with the Fox River in Wisconsin cresting above its 1979 record during the April 17th to 18 event. These are not footnotes to the tornado story. In many communities, the hail, the wind, and the flooding caused more documented damage than the tornadoes themselves. There is a specific meteorological reason why this outbreak has been able to maintain such geographic reach and such sustained energy over 7 full days. And in understanding it helps explain why the new East Coast impact zones confirmed today are not a surprise to forecasters, even if they are alarming to the public. The atmospheric pattern driving this sequence features a highly amplified upper-level ridge over the western United States that has been deflecting the jet stream into a pattern that repeatedly funnels cold, dry air southward from the north, while simultaneously drawing warm, moist air northward from the Gulf of Mexico. That collision has been occurring over and over again along a slowly eastward progressing cold front. Each time the front moves east and the warm sector rebuilds behind it, the ingredients are in place for a new round of storms to fire. This is why the outbreak did not behave like a one-day event. It behaved like a machine, repeatedly resetting itself and producing new threats as each cold front passage cleared away one round of storms and set up the next. The system has now moved far enough east that the warm sector is drawing Gulf moisture into the Carolinas and Georgia, which is why the East Coast is now in the risk zone. The physics of the outbreak have not changed, only geography has. What is confirmed right now, today, is this: a multi-day tornado and severe weather outbreak that began in Oklahoma on April 22nd has now entered its 7th day. It has killed people in Texas. It has issued particularly dangerous situation warnings in Arkansas. It has produced 56 confirmed tornadoes. It has shifted its primary threat zone from the southern plains to the south, central states to the east coast in a matter of days. New slight risk zones are confirmed across a corridor stretching from New Orleans to Jacksonville, and the system has not fully exited the country yet. If you are in the Carolinas, Virginia, Georgia, or any part of the confirmed impact zones as of today, do not look at where this outbreak was last week and assume it has already passed you. The threat has shifted. The new impact zones are confirmed, and the atmosphere is giving one final push before this chapter of the 2026 season closes. Know where you will shelter. Have a way to receive warnings. And when the alert comes, move immediately. Because this outbreak did not slow down when it reached the state line, and it is not going to slow down for the East Coast either.